Okay, so we are Walkers Britain and Europe. We're a small team based in the UK. We were formerly Sherpa Expeditions, and we have been around for, well, 50 years, not quite 50 years, both of us, but the business has been. And we've been running tours on the West Highland Way since the route virtually opened, which was in the sort
1980.
of 1980. So
we've been starting since 1995.
1995. Yeah. So we've been running West Highland Way tours for a long time. Next slide, please. John?
It's me. I'm John, and I work in the office at Walkers Britain, sorry, and I do some of the guiding and research work.
You're our head guide, yeah.
Well, head guide sounds like I do a lot of guiding, but
yeah,
I do some of the research and some guiding of walks, and I've been on the West Highland Way a couple of times with groups over the years.
Yeah.
And Fiona?
I have also been very lucky to do lots of hiking around the world and in the UK. I know the West Highland Way very well because I used to live very, very close to it, very close to the southern. I could see it virtually. See, look, I've become a ghost again. That is really disconcerting. I didn't move. Anyway, so yeah, I know the route really well. I've walked the whole thing, and I've done several of the sections many more times than I can remember. And very happy to talk to you about it all today because I really love it. It's a fabulous trip. So just to give you a bit of context, Scotland is part of the United Kingdom, but very much its own country. Scotland has its own parliament and its own banknotes and its own legal system, its own education system. And I guess makes part of the colour of travel to the UK that we have these different nations that are part of one yet different. Scotland itself is geologically and geographically very diverse. You have the lowlands and the central belt around Glasgow and Edinburgh, where most of the population live. Scotland is a relatively not densely populated place, about 5.5 million people, and most of them in one very concentrated area. The rest of the north, the highlands, where you get the mountainous areas, is much more sparsely populated and much wilder as a result. Scotland's got a huge coastline, almost 800 islands and 30,000 lochs. Lochs are either inland lakes or sea lochs, like fjords. And as a result of that, is a real seafaring history and a great place to eat good seafood as well. Next slide, please. So where is the West Highland Way? So the map there of the full UK, you can kind of see the area roughly mapped. It is on the western side of Scotland, and effectively the route begins in the suburbs of Glasgow in a little place called Mulgai, which is spelt Milngavie. But like a lot of towns in Scotland, you pronounce it slightly differently. The route begins there and it traces north alongside the big Loch Lomond, and then up through the Trossachs National Park to Crianlarich, and then finally into the range of mountains just south of Ben Nevis, the Moors, and through Glencoe. It's a real journey. You feel like you start in the city and you end up somewhere totally different, and you go through some wild country along the way. So John, I'm going to ask you this. Why go hiking in Scotland? What is it about Scottish culture that's different, that makes hiking in Scotland an interesting experience?
Yeah, it's kind of wilder and rawer in many ways. You can have dramatic weather. There's something to be said for that as well. And wild scenery. Although the West Highland Way, for example, is very, very popular, you get a lot of walkers on it. You won't see many people on some sections, like going over the mammals. You can have large areas to yourself. And you have to be prepared for the wild weather as well. But it's a nice experience walking in Scotland away from big towns and cities.
So you feel like you get away from it all.
Great views, great dramatic views, and distant views as well, and big skies and mountains. Very lovely. Yeah.
And what about the history of? I mean, Scotland's got a really rich checkered history. We can't tell you all about that today.
Complicated history.
But what about the history of the clans and the tartans? Why don't we talk about that?
Yeah.
So where does that come from?
Well, the tartans might originally come from a French influence back from the Old Alliance, where a lot of the old families like to make their plaids with woven wool, etc., of different colours to distinguish themselves.
On the battlefield?
And on the battlefield too. But a lot of the clans actually got their colours more or less during the Victorian times, where it became popular too.
Yeah.
But people wore plaids in the battlefield with different colours on.
And Scotland has this history, and if we think to Braveheart, which I would say is essential viewing if you're planning a trip to Scotland, you'll learn a slightly romanticised variation about that clan history. But you feel that and you see that, and there's so much history in the landscape as well, I think, as part of the trail. These are things, iconic sites. Are you likely to encounter some of these things on the West Highland Way?
So the West Highland Way, you actually go past, there's a couple of distilleries. There's one just outside of Millen, and there's one in outskirts of Fort William as well. Yeah. Red Deer, possibly, Rannoch Moor, you might see some of those, perhaps in the man walls as well.
Yeah.
Probably keep away a bit from you. Some of the male stags can get a bit kind of close.
Yeah, and the rutting season is in the autumn. That's when you hear them roaring in the hills. Very dramatic.
And then you probably will see Highland cattle at some point. These are very cute, lovable teddy bear type cows. They're generally very docile, and some of them are farmed for meat, and some of them are more kind of like toy animals kept for pets as well.
Yeah, and
the other thing in the woods you see is the bluebells, and they're April-May time. There's also another called the harebell, which the Scottish call bluebells, which is slightly different.
Yeah. But very beautiful. And although these look like iconic things, you genuinely are likely to encounter them, including great plates of seafood. So getting around in Scotland is very easy. Scotland has an excellent public transport network of trains and buses and ferries. If you are flying or arriving in Glasgow or Edinburgh, it's very easy to get from the two cities in a number of different ways. It takes about an hour to cross the central belt. And getting to the start of the West Highland Way is very easy as well. The start in Mulgai, you just take the train from central Glasgow, and most people start their West Highland Way journey there. At the end of the trip, you will finish in Fort William, which is on the West Highland line, and take the train back usually to Glasgow. This is one of the world's great rail journeys, often described as one of the most beautiful train journeys, crossing Carrow and the moorlands. Very beautiful. And at the end of the trip, if you wanted to continue your travels in Scotland, you can travel on to Skye and to Inverness and all the way up to Thurso if you wanted to visit the Orkney Islands. Really easy to get around. So the West Highland Way itself. Here is a map of the route, and you can kind of see the main sites along the way and some of the stopping off points. The route itself is almost 100 miles, and it feels like a journey. You start on the edges of a city and you walk through increasingly wild country to reach your end point at Fort William. Just to point out that there are a number of different ways to approach this route. We offer 4 different tours. We're going to talk to you about those a little bit later. But I think a key thing to understand that perhaps you can see from the map, you're passing through some really small places where there are actually not very many places to stay. And that's why it is so important to book this tour early. It's increasingly popular, and rightly so. It's a fabulous route, but it can be very hard to get the accommodation bookings, virtually impossible to get last minute bookings for this trip. So if you're thinking about doing it for next year, please book now. So let's talk about the hiking. Jon, is the trail well waymarked?
Very well waymarked. There's all these new waymarks which have gone up since I first did the tour, when it wasn't so well waymarked, and quite a few of them have rotted away. And so it's very unlikely that you're going to go astray. You also have your digital app, which you follow on the phone, and that shows you where you are exactly via blue dot. So you'll be tracing that as you go along. But there's also other people usually you'll see on the route, and it's apart from being very low visibility, like going over the memoirs, maybe you're likely to have reasonable trail conditions.
I would say this is one of those trails where it's virtually impossible to get lost. The trail is very well defined. It's very obvious. There are not many other trails, and the little white thistle logo, which is the Scottish National Trail sign, makes it really easy to make your way around. So after leaving Glasgow, you hit Loch Lomond, which is the body of water you can see here in the background.
And as you come down to Loch Lomond, this is over Connacht Hill. You can see the Great Highland Fort, which separates Highland from Lowland Scotland.
Yeah, that's the line of islands on the left there, which connects all the way up to the northeast of Scotland. And Loch Lomond is an enormous inland loch, and you find yourself walking alongside it pretty much for 2 days.
That's right, up from Roadennan.
Up from Roadennan, which I think we can see on the next slide. And there we are. That is Roadennan down at the bottom.
And behind that, you've got Ben Lomond, one of the high Munros, over 3,000 feet, and quite a popular destination for people who perhaps stay an extra night at Roadennan and go up there in the good weather.
Yeah,
and,
so that's an option if you wanted to extend your trip and if you wanted to climb Scotland's most southerly Munro. The trail alongside Loch Lomond is generally pretty well defined, but there is a couple of sections that are a little bit tricky, and this is one of them. This is the trail near Rob Roy's cave. Rob Roy was a Scottish outlaw from the area, a cattle rustler who fell out with his family and everybody else and ran off to live wild. I'm not sure he actually did stay in this cave, but that's what people say. There is an alternative route to take, but our experience is that people who do this section find it surprisingly difficult because it's quite technical walking in some ways. You have to just keep an eye on your feet.
Lots of roots, and
lots of tree roots and rocks,
wet,
and it can be wet. So it's to be taken care of. I think the best thing to say is just take your time on these sections and allow plenty of time to do it. Get a good early start and expect to take lots of breaks along the way.
And then heading later on up the top of Loch Lomond, you hit the high moorlands areas and you join what is known as General Wade's Road, which takes you basically from Tyndrum all the way to into Kinlochleven.
And who was General Wade?
So General Wade basically designed this road system to fight the Jacobites during the wars in the 1740s. The Jacobites are people who supported Bonnie Prince Charlie.
Yeah.
And so the road generally follows is quite just a broad gravel track. In some places it's paved, some places it's a tarmac road now. But you follow that more or less for about three days. So it's very well defined. And here we are going down to a place called Inveroran and
about to cross Rannoch Moor.
Rannoch Moor before Rannoch Moor, yeah.
So the nature of the trail has changed. You've had your couple of days alongside Loch Lomond, and now you have the moorlands. And then this is...
Then you go up towards King's House, and this is a Bucay Moor, the shepherd of Glencoe, basically.
Yeah.
And this mountain stands at the head of Glencoe, and it is an iconic peak in Scotland.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful mountain, and it marks the entrance to the big, long, deep valley of Glencoe. At this point, the trail actually heads slightly away from Glencoe to take you over the mountains to Ben Nevis, but it's a really important kind of crossing points, I would say, in the route.
This is Blackrock Cottage, iconic cottage. It was actually built for people who were working on the roads up there originally, but now it belongs to the Women's Scottish Mountaineering Club, isn't it? Association, And that's again Bucay Moor in the background.
Yeah,
one of the best, one of the nicest and easiest dramatic photographs you can take in Scotland. And then the hardest part of, well, the highest, maybe not the hardest part of the walk is going over the Devil's Staircase, which again is General Wade's Road. They used to actually take guns, artillery over the pass on the road there. And this is from the top and looking down towards the Mamors, which are the last mountains before you get into Fort William.
Yeah, and the Devil's Staircase isn't really scary.
It's not that scary at all.
It's not scary at all. It's really quite straightforward. The weather on the trail can vary from days like this, which are sunny and warm and flowery, to
days like this.
Yes, wherein it can be wild and wet and cold, and you can have all of that in one day, which is why it's really important on this trail to be prepared, and packing and getting your packing right is absolutely vital. So, John,
so you've got to be prepared for bad weather. I mean, you can have really good weather, so you need to be prepared for hot weather as well, but especially in the summer season. But you can, especially over the high passes, be exposed to quite strong winds and rain. and even fog and cold conditions. So you need a whole range of layers for your walk, and it's good to pack with that in mind and have maybe a couple of merino t-shirts and the fleece, and make sure you have full waterproofs. It's worth having a hat of some description, a warm hat, and gloves. I've certainly needed gloves a couple of days when I've done it as well.
Would not be unusual.
Hiking poles are very important, especially if you have weak knees, but to keep on some of the long descents, like down to Kinloch and alongside Loch Lomond in places, poles are very, very useful.
And good boots, I think, because the trail's quite rocky in places,
so you want
and
boots,
it can be wet.
Yeah, you want boots with which are water resistant with a cushioned sole, because you've got quite a bit of road and track walking involved, but also with good ankle support. You don't need a super hard soled boot, but just a good cushioned soled boot. And then you could first aid kit, suntan cream, and various repellents.
Yes, which we'll talk about in a moment. Next slide, please. So when to go. An important factor in when to go is the weather, but also the midges.
So these little devils, the midges, they sort of hatch out the end of May, and they're with you through the high summer period before sort of dying off in September. So most people, most people walk the West Highland Way in May, June, and September. These are the busiest months in terms of walkers, but May and June tend to be the nicest months in terms of weather and less rainfall. There's slightly more rainfall in September, but September can be a nice time to go. The midges obviously peak high season. You may not be troubled by midges much at all. They tend to appear at around dawn and dusk, and they don't tend to come out when it's very windy. And if you don't stop too long anywhere, more boggy, you shouldn't be too worried about.
I mean, I would say that they can be fearsome, but don't worry about it too much, because they kind of come and go. It's not like they're there all the time.
But having said that, it's worth having repellents such as Smidge here, which you maybe pour a spray on around your neck or around your any exposed area of skin. It's worth carrying because the effects of midges can vary between year and year. Sometimes you have more summers with more midges, so you can get these fairly cheap head nets, which also go under hats, etc., under hats and stuff. So you can wear those, and that gives you a degree of protection.
Okay, so let's talk about the accommodation. This is a picture of Buccleuch Moor again, the big beautiful herdsman of Glen Etive, and this is the King's House Hotel. So the King's House is actually very old. Part of the building is very, very old, and it was constructed for the General Wade road building project in the 1700s. But it's recently been expanded, and it's now this beautiful hotel. And a great place to stay. Our two main itineraries include nights here, the 8-day and the 10-day. It's a great place to add an extra night if you want to. You can explore around the area or just chill out and enjoy the location. But it gets very heavily booked. So again, it's really important to book ahead. And if we just look at some of the other types of accommodation, you can see that it varies. So the King's House these days is a big hotel, but you'll be staying in small hotels and B&Bs. Some of the places you'll stay will be kind of quite traditional Scottish houses with different sized rooms. They'll be in different locations, but generally the welcome will be warm, and you will get a great Scottish breakfast. This is what the rooms look like. You've got a sorry. That's it. Okay, typical rooms. You've got a twin room there and a double. Very common to get rooms of this type in Scotland. Clean, simple, and functional. And the food.
Yes.
So there are not many gourmet restaurants between Glasgow and Fort William. In fact, there are none. Most of the food that you will be eating will be the food that you find in the local pub, or in some cases the small restaurants, of which there are not very many. And it tends to be from the British pub grub menu, things like fish and chips, pie and chips, and you'll find simple Italian dishes. You might get some Scottish foods, and this is the classic Scottish dish, haggis, neeps and tasses. So that is haggis, turnip and potato. Genuinely, people eat this in Scotland. It's very popular. Haggis, of course, is a sheep's stomach stuffed with a secret mixture of different ingredients. Each butcher and each person who makes haggis keeps their recipe secret. But it's full of herbs, it's very rich tasting, it's got lots of offal in it, so it's not for everyone. But if you want to try a taste of true Scotland, I would suggest it would go down well with a wee dram along the way.
So we do several...
hang on. When you get to Fort William,
yeah.
I would strongly suggest getting some local seafood. There are some restaurants there that serve the fabulous local fresh produce you can get. And the restaurants in Glasgow, some fantastic places to eat fresh Scottish seafood. Further along the coast in Scotland, if you're continuing your journey, there are loads of great places where you can get fresh langoustines and crab directly from the harbour.
So there's several trips that we actually run, and following the West Highland Way and other parts of Scotland. So the actual archetypal classic 10-day West Highland Way is the full trip. So this runs from Mongai all the way up to Fort William, and you do every section of the route up to about maybe...
Sorry, it's very sensitive.
15, up to around about 15 miles a day in 24 kilometers. And this is what a lot of people do, and you'll complete the whole journey this way.
The other option is to do a slightly shorter variation over 8 days. We've lost a few slides there, else.
Right. So.
Yep, it's to do this version over 8 days.
Yeah.
How is this different, Jon?
Yes. So this one basically misses out the first day, which took you to Drimmen. So instead you get the train out to Glasgow and then a bus up to Drimmen. Have your first night there, and so you're missing out what is known as the probably the most boring day of the coast of the West Highland Way. And also there is a transfer from Ardluey to a place called near Crianlarich, and you have a shortened day.
So it misses out a part of the route to make it more manageable. Yeah. The other alternative is a shorter 5-day trip. So this is, in my opinion, the most scenic section from Bridge of Orchy North. It's easy to get to Bridge of Orchy. The train stops there, and the bus stops there too. And from there, you do the last section of the trail all the way to Fort William. So a great option if you have less time. The other option is to take our taste of the West Highland Way trip. So this comes from our range of upgraded tours. It is 6 days. It also starts in Bridge of Orchy, and it includes 2 nights at a hotel in Glencoe. Glencoe you don't really get to see on the standard West Highland Way route, so it's a great opportunity to see the beautiful big valley. It is a huge valley with some incredible mountains around it, with a nice easy walk down in the valley bottom and a nice hotel to rest in along the way. And all the hotels on this trip are of higher quality. So as the West Highland Way is very hard to book if you don't book ahead, we thought we would tell you about some of the other alternatives. This is a picture from the Isle of Skye with the Old Man of Storr, and that is an excellent alternative route. Next slide, please. We offer a tour that you could easily add on to the West Highland Way because it starts in Fort William, where the West Highland Way ends. And that would be to take the Harry Potter train over the viaducts to Mallaig and the ferry to Skye, and to spend a few days there doing some nice, easy walks, enjoying what is one of Scotland's most iconic and beautiful islands. Another option in place of, or in addition to the West Highland Way, is the Great Glen Way. So this also begins in Fort William, and this route crosses another boundary, another Highland fault line, and the Great Glen, and it follows the Caledonian Canal, which eventually becomes Loch Ness, and you reach Inverness, at the other end of Scotland. This is an easier hiking trail and also very, very popular, and a great way to see more of Scotland if you have more time and you'd like to do 2 trails. You can do them both. This is a great, we think, West Highland Way alternative. It is the Rob Roy Way, and we mentioned Rob Roy earlier. This is his area, this route between Drimmen and Pitlochry. It follows a different part of the Highlands, slightly further over towards the east. I would say the routes here are quieter. You pass through some really lovely little towns, Aberfoyle and Aberfeldy and Pitlochry, and lots of distilleries. Perthshire, Highland Perthshire, which Pitlochry and Aberfeldy are both in, has many, many distilleries. So that's another great alternative. Another alternative, very, very different in character, is the Five Coastal Path. So this begins in Edinburgh and follows the coast around the East Nook of Fife, the East Nook. Beautiful fishing villages, coastal walking, and very gentle trails. We have 3 different tours to choose from along this route. Very popular, and people genuinely love it. And then finally, the other range of taste trips that we offer in Scotland. There are several more. This is well worth looking at if you like a little bit more comfort in your travels and a little bit more time to see things. I would check out this range of tours, and that includes also walking in the Cairngorms and Speyside and walking in Highland Perthshire. So why should you choose to travel with us?
Well, we've been doing it for years, so we know we have good relationships with our hotel suppliers and baggage movement companies, and we get quite good feedback about anything which has changed on the ground and anything changed with accommodations. So it's
we have our finger on the pulse, and we know it very well. I think we produce a brilliant app full of information that Jon and I have written to help you along the way with all of our knowledge that we have decided to share with you.
Luggage transfers,
obviously, on the self-guided trips.
The emergency hotline.
You just need to show up and walk.